Hey guys, good morning. This is Chris Proctor. Welcome to my YouTube vlog. Today what I want to talk about is something that is a really important overall measure of your health and wellness, and that is your blood pressure. Blood pressure is something that we all need to keep tabs on at the very least, at least once a year when you go to your physical. But people who have issues with their blood pressure may need to have it checked even more often than that. So today we're going to talk a little bit about what blood pressure is, what it means, and ways to kind of improve it. Now, that being said, I am not a healthcare provider of any kind. I'm not a nurse, doctor, physician assistant, anything like that. I'm a personal trainer. So if you are someone who has high blood pressure issues, suspects you may have high blood pressure issues, or being treated for high blood pressure, please check with your healthcare providers before you make any changes to your regimen. Whether that be starting to exercise, medication changes. Do not do any of that without speaking to your doctors first, okay? I am not qualified to tell you to do that. What we are going to talk about today is just the ins and outs of blood pressure, okay? So, blood pressure is a measure of the pressure that is exerted on the artery walls inside your body, both when your heart beats and when it's at rest in between beats, okay? So when you go to the doctor or anywhere that measures your blood pressure, they call it out basically in two numbers, and they'll say, 120 over 80. So the first number, the higher number, is called your systolic blood pressure, and your systolic blood pressure is a measure of the pressure being exerted on the artery walls inside your body when the heart beats and squeezes and pushes the blood out to the rest of your body. Okay, so your heart is a muscle. You need to remember that it's a type of muscle fiber in your body. It's called cardiac muscle. So it contracts and it pushes that blood out through the arteries to the rest of the body to do what it needs to do for you. So your systolic, that top number, which is always going to be higher, is the number that is showing you the pressure on the artery walls when the blood is being pushed into the arteries and out to the rest of your body. That bottom number, which is the lower number, which in my example I said 120 over 80, so 80 would be what's called your diastolic blood pressure. Diastolic means the pressure on your artery walls in between beats of your heart. So when your heart's actually at rest, what pressure is still present in those artery walls, okay? So if you think about it, your heart pumps, it pushes the blood out forcefully into the arteries, and then in between, that pressure decreases, right? Obviously, because your heart is not pushing the blood. It's going to be higher when it pushes the blood, and it reduces in between beats, right? Does that make sense? So that's your two numbers, and that's kind of what they're measuring when they take your blood pressure. Now, high blood pressure over time can cause a lot of problems. If you don't already know this, then I would definitely talk to your doctor or read up on it, because it's a really, really important measure of your health. So what happens is anytime your blood, in any of us, whether it's me, you, anybody else, when your blood gets pushed out to the rest of the body, it will leave what are called fatty streaks or plaque deposits inside your arteries. Okay, we all have these to some degree, but if we are living an unhealthy lifestyle, maybe not having a great diet, or have a family history of high blood pressure, we may have more of those arterial plaque buildups, or fatty streaks as they're sometimes referred to in our arteries, okay? So your blood goes out, it leaves those streaks over time. So if you're somebody who is not exercising and not really eating well, what you'll find will happen is over time, those arterial openings are going to get smaller and smaller and smaller because of arterial plaque buildup, and that can lead to what's called occlusion or blocked arteries, and that's where you're in a lot of trouble. That puts you at risk for heart attacks, strokes, and things like that, and it's no joke. It's not something to screw around with, because you can actually obviously die from those events. So that's not something you want to take lightly, okay? So excuse my terrible art here, but just to give you an idea of what arteries look like. So if this is your artery, this would be more of like a healthy artery right here. So this artery doesn't have really much plaque buildup. It's pretty open, pretty free flowing. So that's what a good healthy artery is going to look like. It's going to be nice and open, not a lot of kind of buildup in there. This is an artery that does have some plaque. Okay, so this is the arterial plaque buildup that we talked about that is left by the blood being pushed through our arteries, okay? And then, so you're going to have a little bit of that plaque buildup there, which is kind of, we all are going to have a little bit of it, but as it gets greater and greater, it becomes more of a danger to our health. And then finally, we have an artery that has pretty much been, occluded more than 50%. Okay, so we have what's called a major occlusion right here, and this is a big chunk of plaque. This stuff can all just start to build up, and as you can see between these two arteries here, this artery is wide open. This artery has, pretty major blockages there. So what that does, that's restricting blood flow. That's going to cause us to be, again, at higher risk for heart attack, which is obviously not something we want to have happen, or strokes, or a lot of other major health issues. Okay, so this is healthy, moving towards a little bit more unhealthy, and this is kind of your danger zone. Okay, so when people have major occlusions like this, we are looking at people who are likely going to be on medications, or they're going to have to undergo procedures like something called a stent, which is when they take, it's basically like a little tiny metal screen, and they put it in there to help open up the arteries again and help to prevent more of those fatty deposits from sticking. Sometimes they'll put in something called a drug-eluting stent, which basically means it's a stent that is coated with a drug that helps to keep the arteries from getting occluded again. Now, and then the other thing is called an angioplasty, which you may have heard of. It's basically where they put thread like a balloon up into the artery, and they pump it up. So what it does is it gets in there and it pushes and pushes and pushes the artery open again. Now, these are not permanent fixes. People who have stents or angioplasty, things like that, they can easily re-occlude an artery. Okay, so I saw that many times working in a cardiac rehab. There was people who've had stents multiple times because they're just not making the necessary corrections to their lifestyle to keep this from happening again. Okay, so this is not a permanent fix. You do need to address lifestyle factors. Okay, so the current guidelines, now keep in mind, these all refer to resting blood pressure measures. These are not exercise measures, because when we exercise, as we know, obviously our heart's working harder, and that means our blood pressure is going to tend to be higher. So when we talk about these guidelines for your blood pressure, we are talking about resting measures. So meaning if you're sitting down, not doing anything, no real reason for your blood pressure to be elevated. So right now, as of December 2019, the guidelines from the American Heart Association are that normal blood pressure would be less systolic, less than 120, and diastolic, less than 80. Okay, so something like 118 over 70 or something like that. Okay, this here is slightly elevated, 120 over 120 to 129 for systolic, less than 80 still for your diastolic blood pressure. Here we move into what's called stage 1 hypertension. So that means stage 1 elevated chronic high blood pressure. 130 to 139 systolic, 80 to 89 diastolic. Okay, those are considered stage 1 hypertension, so that's not where you want to be. Stage 2 hypertension, you have systolic blood pressure of greater than or equal to 140, and then diastolic is greater than or equal to 90. So if you have a blood pressure of 140 over 90 at rest, meaning you're not exercising, there's really no reason for your blood pressure to be that high, that's a problem. Those are things that need to be addressed by your healthcare provider. Down here, if you are resting and you have a blood pressure value systolic of something like 180, that is what's called hypertensive crisis. That is a 911 call. So if you ever find yourself with a blood pressure that high at rest, you need to call 911, because that's an emergency. Okay, so those are kind of the blood pressure recommendations, for the average person. Okay, and as we get older, the blood pressure acceptable values tend to get a little bit higher. I believe for senior citizens, I believe 140 is actually acceptable right now. So what can we do about it? What can we do about our blood pressure numbers? Well, there's two things that I talk about all the time that are near and dear to my heart that can help lower blood pressure. So a healthy diets that stay away from excessive sodium, excessive fat, and all kinds of garbage that's in a lot of foods that people eat, and regular exercise. Regular exercise over time has been shown to reduce blood pressure. And if you're somebody who is on blood pressure medications, in some cases, in implementing a healthy diet and a regular exercise program within safe parameters can help you to reduce the amount of medication you're taking, and in some cases you can get off it altogether. Again, that being said, like I said in the beginning of the video, if you are on medications, do not make alterations to your dosages or anything like that without talking to your doctors, okay? That's not a good idea. I am not advocating that you do that. Please make sure you consult your healthcare providers before you make any sort of changes. But that is what we know about exercise and a healthy diet, okay? There's a whole dietary approach that is geared towards reducing hypertension. It's called DASH, D-A-S-H, dietary approach to stopping hypertension. It's specifically for people who are on high blood pressure. If you've never heard of it, you may want to ask your doctor about it if you feel like you're somebody who might need it, okay? So I hope you guys found this helpful. I hope it gave you some information that maybe it taught you something you didn't already know. If you found the content valuable, I'd love for you to share this out on any one of your social media networks that you use. Please feel free to send this or tag a friend who might want to learn about this. Hit the button down in the right to subscribe to my YouTube channel. You can follow me on Instagram. I do all kinds of health and fitness content on my Instagram account. It's at chrisproctorwellness. I have a free Facebook page, Chris Proctor Wellness, and if you have any questions or if you're interested in any of the training or nutrition programming that I offer, you can check out my website, chrisproctorwellness.com, or shoot me an email at chrisproctorwellness@gmail.com. All right, guys, thanks so much. Have an awesome day.